Hello everyone, I hope you're doing fantastic. So in today's video, I will be reviewing all the books that I've read so far in the month of August, my birthday month. All right, don't go anywhere. All right, so I'm sitting this way because I am feeling this natural light. I don't really get enough sun, so this is perfect. Anyways, you guys, how you doing? Welcome to my channel. My name is Chilanda and this is Library Without Borders. Okay, well, I don't know how we're gonna do this, but listen, I'm currently sitting here. I'm all alone. Husband is at work, the kids are at school, so I decided that I will be filming my last video outside, but there's so many bees outside. Anyways, you guys, so the first book I want to talk to you is this book here. It's actually a thriller. It's by Romy Hausman and it's titled Dear Child. Now, this book, there's actually an adaptation of this book. It was made into, I believe, a movie on Netflix, and it's titled the same, Dear Child. So it's weird because I read the book and then I was on Netflix trying to find a movie, a series to watch with Bae, and I was like, wait, this title sounds familiar, and then lo and behold, it was the same. So anyways, this is a story of Lena. So I need to be careful. Lena, and then what's Jasmine. Okay, sorry, I don't want to get confused because y'all know how these thrillers be confusing sometimes, and I don't want to tell you guys the plot. But listen, so this story starts with a girl who's gone missing. Her name is Lena. She was abducted, but she's been missing, I believe, for 13 years. And the way the story starts is that there's this girl who shows up in the hospital, all battered, like she was into a car accident, and she shows up in the hospital. And there's this detective who is on the case to find Lena, and he's been talking with the family, and he calls the family and tells them that, you know what, there's this girl, she matches the description of Lena. And Lena's parents are like, oh my god, like, you know, what's the man's name? Because it's different POV as well, huh? You have the point of view of Hannah, Jasmine, and what's the Lena, as well as, what's the guy's name? Matthias. So you have the point of view of these men. So Matthias is the father of Lena, and him and his wife, they go to the hospital. They're like, you know, their heart is beating fast. They're like, okay, they found Lena after almost 13 years. And then he goes to the hospital and discovers that this girl who supposedly is Lena isn't real Lena. So the detective is like, she does have the scar. The scar is very significant on the forehead. And he's like, no, that's not my daughter. The detective is like, are you sure? And the father, Matthias, is like, do you think I wouldn't know my own child? Long story short, we start to hear about Lena, supposedly Lena, in the hospital. And you hear her story of how she was abducted by this crazy man. And I'm hoping not to tell you guys the story. I don't want to ruin it for you. But y'all just heard me say that Matthias said Lena is not really Lena. And this girl in the hospital is now recounting her story of how she was abducted and brought into a cabin. And there she was made to live the life of this supposedly Lena girl. And there were two children in that cabin. One was really blonde, a girl, Hannah, and then her brother. And this guy every day goes to work, locks that cabin, and then he beats her, abuses her, and does all kinds of things with this poor girl who was supposed to replace Lena. Now, something did happen to Lena, but obviously I can't tell you. And the coincidence of her finding herself in that cabin is also something I cannot tell you. But what's even more crooked is the story of Hannah, the daughter. The way she's described in the book, she's intelligent, and she's those person who's not street smart but book smart. Whenever you ask her something, she gives you the whole definition exactly as it is either written in a book or in a dictionary. You understand what I mean? But there's something creepy about Hannah, this daughter of the abductor. And once you start finding out what happened, y'all saw that bee, right? Once you discover who is the culprit of the abduction of Lena, there's a boyfriend who's suspected. I can't tell you if that person is indeed the culprit. There is a journalist involved. Can't tell you if he's the culprit. And there are the dad's friends as well, the detective as well. Anyways, you guys, I did have a good time with this story. It was really interesting. What I want to say is that in the middle of the book, Hannah and her brother are brought into this, I guess, hospital for children. I guess to rehabilitate them to real life, because y'all know that they were born in a cabin and never saw even a crack of a window. The way she describes Hannah, the daughter, the whole recirculation of ventilation and air, it's so freaky to know that these people were not made to see the light or the outside world. So once she is found, Matthias was the grandfather of Hannah, because Hannah, those two kids, are Lena's children. So when he sees Hannah, he's like, oh my gosh, that's Lena. But obviously it's not Lena, because she's obviously young, and Lena, after so many years, would have been like in her 20s, late 20s. So he decides that he wants to take Hannah to the place, Matthias, the grandparents. They want to take care of her, but they don't take care of the boy, because the boy just acts crazy, y'all. He's really like cuckoo in the head. But anyways, that's all I'm gonna say, you guys. It was a good thriller. The twist was, did I see the twist? No, I did not see the twist, which is really crazy, because of all the names that I named, I did not see it coming. Like, that man, I couldn't have fathomed him being who he was. Like, once you discover who the abductor of Lena is, you're like, okay. And Jasmine as well. Jasmine, I'm just gonna say the name. Okay, you guys, I hope that's enough for you to actually...
He's dead, another dead one, deadified, two more dead.
That one in my eye. Anyways, you guys, so it's a 3 out of 5. I definitely recommend. For a thriller, it did keep me on my toes. And also, if you want to watch the show, you can also watch the show, right? Also, we have Ayana Gray, Beasts of Ruin. Y'all know I read Beast of Prey and I really loved it. So we obviously keep following Akon and Kofi. They're on this journey. Okay, I hope I'm not going to ruin it for you guys, because I hope you've watched my video where I was speaking of the first book in this series. So remember, in the first one, they were looking for the Shaitani. The Shaitani was apparently the one responsible for killing the people of Lukosa, of that township, right? Okay, so in the second book, something does happen with Shaitani, but then something does happen with Akon and Kofi. The way the story begins in this book is that she wakes up in this, I guess, how do you call it? Is it temple or fortress? And she's among these other, how do you call them? Yes, she's part of these people called the Raja, okay? And they have several powers that they can wield in that world. So she is possibly, when I say she, Kofi, she's possibly the first one to wield a different kind of power than the different Darajas, which makes her most valuable among the rest of the Darajas. So anyway, she's in this temple and she discovers that Fedu, he was in the previous book as well, has this sinister plan of bringing all the Darajas together and using her powers, including the Splendid, which we also learn about in the first book, in order to wreak havoc in this world. And it's her journey in order to stop Fedu. That's what's going on with Kofi. But then we also discover the part of Akon. Akon is on a journey to find Kofi, because in the first book they were separated. So in this part, he's wanting to find her. So he meets several people along the way who will then help him reach the fortress. But before then, you know, the journey is fraught with gods and enemies, including his brother, who is part of the Six, basically. And it's this brotherhood of people who are supposedly protecting Lukosa, and his brother was part of it, and he was also supposed to be part of it, if you recall how I reviewed it in the first book. But something happened and he didn't become part of it. So he's being pursued by his brother, by all these other enemies. he goes on that journey with another person that is very important. It's the grandmother of Kofi, and she will be also a very valuable pawn in this game of gods and beasts and all of that good stuff. Okay, you guys. I'm sorry, I feel like if I keep talking, I'm gonna just... Essentially, that's what's going on. So Akon does arrive at the temple, and there he will meet all the other Doraja, including other friends that Kofi met while being at the temple, with whom she will go on this journey basically to defeat Fedu and his sinister plan. And obviously there's a third book in it, which I look forward to reading it. So this is a 4 out of 5 for me. I really had a good time. The other one was 4. This one is a 4. You know, I'm enjoying the series so far. So next, I read this lovely book. Y'all know when I said that I don't deal with the dead? This book was full of the dead, like of deads. Anyways, of dead people, that's what I mean. So it's The Last Heir to Blackwood Library. So this story is a story of Ivy Radcliffe. She's a regular girl who's, I think is London. She lives somewhere in London. I know, where was it? Hampshire? Yorkshire Moors, yeah. So she becomes Lady Hayworth, owner of the sprawling estate of Yorkshire Moors. Now, the thing with it is that she inherits this castle by chance because all the descendants of Hayworth are no longer alive. Now, what happens is that she leaves everything she knows to obviously go in this abbey in Yorkshire Moors, and there she will discover lots of secrets and sinister, disturbing elements. And she will have to fight against all those powerful elements, not only to remain who she is, but also keep control of her memories. Because one aspect of that castle is that there is beautiful library with old books, and just you can just imagine those English books with the beautiful spines and old smelling leather covers, all that stuff. And she's in that library, but every time she goes there, she feels like she has a headache. And not only that, she thinks that she is seeing ghosts. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, y'all, it was a ghost story. So she feels like, yeah, she's seeing things, but every time she leaves the castle, she's feeling better. So one day she decides to go out of town, because before she even discovered the library that was within her castle, she was going outside. There was a library there, and there she met this gentleman, this man, very handsome, and there started like a friendship, right? And this man is like, you know, he's like, okay, I want to take you out, and so on. But at the same time, there's also the staff of the castle who seem to know something but are not willing to tell Ivy what's going on. Like, there's the higher staff there, the housekeeper, like the chief housekeeper. I forgot the English name for it. She's the one who seems to be in control of everything and also controlling the staff there. And every time Ivy is trying to ask her, like, what's going on, like, you know, there's some things that you guys are not telling me, they won't tell her. So she's like, okay, well, if you're not telling me, then I'm gonna do as I wish, as I please with this castle. And so far, so long story short, there's also her chauffeur. So the thing with her chauffeur is that he seems to have a little something for her, but he's not like nice about it. Like, he's really, what's the word, stiff. You know those English chauffeur, you know how they're always portrayed very stiff, very like, you know, but yet when he's being described, you can tell that he's developing things for Ivy, and he's trying to warn Ivy as well that she needs to leave this castle. But Ivy's like, if you're not telling me exactly what's going on, then I'm not leaving. This is rightfully my castle. So as the story progresses, you also start to see Ivy lose her memory while she's in this library. And at the same time, the ghosts that she is seeing, there are a couple of them. There's one who's absolutely mean, and there's another one who may want to help her. And one night while she's reading a book, in the library, she discovers a book that's like her life, like her story. And boy, oh boy, like, oh my God. Okay, you guys, I'm gonna wrap this up because I don't want to tell you this like too much. And before I even continue with that aspect, the man that she met at the library who decides to like pursue something with her tells her that she should open her library to his friends because there's something so precious about the library, and there's some books that they're looking for with some ancient, not incantations, but ancient, what is it, potions, magic, riddles, something like that. And she makes the mistake to not only marry him and opening that library to his friends and his people, not knowing what she unleashed by doing that. Okay, so I hope that was a good summary of the book, and I enjoyed the book. It was an interesting book. The reason why I even picked it up, y'all know that, like I said, the main item was the library, and anything with library, we love books. I was intrigued. That's why I picked it up. But the story, it wasn't scary. It wasn't that spooky, as I mentioned. It did have paranormal elements to it. And Ivy will learn the hard way of what it is to be the owner and Lady Hayworth of the Yorkshire Moors Castle. So it's a 3.5 out of 5. I would recommend if you're into, paranormal and books and English and Abbey and UK and London and rainy seasons and all that stuff. It's very atmospheric, I say, right? So it's very atmospheric. Next, I read The 12 Tribes of Hattie by Ayanna Mathis. Now, this book was really interesting because I actually have a question for you guys. So, in this book, the author talks about colored people because it's set in the 1923, okay? I didn't know she was 15, but 1923. So back then, the language was different than what we use today, especially for black people. So she uses colored, she says how certain places were used for colored people. And I just wanted to ask a question. So can we still use the word, like when you say this is for colored people? Because remember when Tyler said she's colored, it was quite taboo. But today, how we say, this is for, so do you say it's for people of color, but you don't say this is for colored people? Please, someone in the comment, help me understand this. So we can say today, what's acceptable is to say people of color, but you can't say it's for colored people. Am I getting this right? So please put in the comment if I'm understanding this correctly. So anyways, without further ado, this book, as I mentioned, talks about Hattie Shepherd. She is in Georgia and settles in Philadelphia. And the story is written through her point of view, and I believe her 9 children, including her sister, point of view of her sister. And I really liked the book. It was heartbreaking at times. It was hard to read some parts. What we get from this book is that Hattie is 15 years old, and the way the story starts, it's triggering, y'all. First of all, let me just mention that it's very triggering because there is mention of babies dying. So that's how the story starts. It's pretty brutal because she's in this house, her house, and August, who's her husband, is gone. And she finds herself, I guess, in the middle of winter with 2 babies who are twins, who are suffering, coughing, they have high fever, and she's doing everything to try to save them. The doctor came, prescribed whatever they were being given during that time to fix the cough and all that stuff, but unfortunately the baby passes away, and she's heartbroken. And I believe it stems from that event that the rest of her life, including the rest of her children, would feel the brunt, the pain of that event. And that's the event that sets the tone for the rest of her life and the life of her children. And I'm not going to remember all the kids' children, but I know the first one, I believe it's 6. Yeah, she has some funny names in here. Is it 6? Floyd, so that's her first child. Floyd, he's obviously into music, he's playing jazz, and he's just this black man trying to, make it out in Philadelphia. He does travel around the US with a group. And the story with him is that he does have multiple relationships with different women, but then he likes men. And back then, y'all know that first, you're a black man. Second, you have a thing for men. So he couldn't come out. And at some point, you discover him going somewhere far in the forest, meeting one of those. They had a name that they were calling these men that were so sort of flamboyant with, being out there. And he has relations. Say relations. He has relations with this man, and yet he doesn't want to accept it. He refuses to acknowledge that part of him. And that's one struggle you discover with Floyd. And then there's another child. I believe his name is 6. His story is that, obviously, like I said, these children are Hattie's children. His story is that he was burned when he was a child. Something does happen with his siblings. While his sibling was doing their hair, y'all know back then they were like ironing, not ironing, but curling. Black people know that you were curling hair, and then you were using all these curling machines, and I don't know what happened, but he goes into the tub and that thing falls in the tub and he gets, what is it, 3rd-degree burn on his whole body. And apart from that, he's also intuitive with his spirituality. Apparently God talks to him and he does sort of, accomplish miracles? I think so. So that's the story of him. Anyways, you guys, like I said, there's 9 children. I can't give you a story of all the children, but there's a different story that I wanted to talk to you about that was really representative of the time in which Hattie and her children were living in, You could just imagine Philadelphia in the 1920s. And apart from that, there is her sister, Alice. I believe her name is Alice. Alice, unfortunately, is not able to have children. And what happens is that Hattie gives birth to a child, but she's way advanced in her age. I believe she's like in her 40s, late 40s, not 50, late 40s. And Alice contacts her and says, I can take care of your child because I have the means. She's well off compared to Hattie. And that's one thing about Hattie. She's very poor. Like, her relationship with August, her husband, is absolutely dreadful. And the way she explains is that they can't get along, y'all. They cannot get along. But apparently when they're in the bedroom, it's magical, whatever happens there. But outside of the bed, Hattie is a different person, and August sees that. And you also hear his point of view in the book. And once you hear his point of view, you won't call him a douchebag or anything like that. Because at first, when you see what he does, like barely stays at home, barely brings in money, and but yet he loves his children and all that stuff. You hear his point of view, how he tells you that demeanor, that behavior, that attitude that Hattie has is just not welcoming. So he's not able to be this better man that she wants him to be. Anyways, going back to Alice has this conversation with not only her other sister, because Hattie has 2 sisters. There's Marion, I guess, who talks to Alice and tells her, she gave birth and they're barely making it. I think it'll be good if you would ask her. Long story short, she talks to Hattie and is like, okay, I'll give you everything. She sends her money, bags of like rice, all that stuff. And Hattie has a hard time because she does love her children. Even if she's not the sweetest who shows emotion physically, she has taken care of all those children, right? So she's having a hard time giving her baby away. But what I want to say about the story of Alice is that while they're traveling, they stop, right? They stop to take a break and eat food. And they are met by a group of these white people. Oh my gosh, I was hurt. So they're stopped by 3 white men. And they're enjoying their food, you know what I mean? They're enjoying their food and all that. And these white men come, and oh my gosh, that moment, my heart was beating so fast, because the way they just, the way they used to call black men like boy, that expression is used to describe Alice's husband, and that was just, I couldn't do it, y'all. Like, I can't do it. Like, being with my husband, walking, and the disrespect, and these looked like they were not so well off in their lives. Y'all see that beat? It's right there. It's just right there. And I just don't want to move my camera, but it's behind it. So anyways, that was really hard to read, and there were other aspects that were really hard to read. And one last thing I'm going to say about this book is that Hattie does have an affair. Now, like I said, when you learn about the character of August, her husband, again, I'm never going to excuse an affair. For me, and I stick to it until I pass on, just leave. I know people say you can't. There are so many things that, just don't have an affair. I don't know. Anyways, you guys, like I said, The 12 Tribes of Hattie is a fantastic book. I really enjoyed the book, actually. Like I said, it's emotional, it's hard, it is very reminiscent of the life in the 1920s in Philadelphia, in Georgia. These people go through a lot of traumatic events. And like I said, I just named 2 children, but all the other children have their own trauma. Like, I didn't talk about the girls. There was Floyd and 6 are boys. But there's Ella, I think there's Belle. They all have really traumatic events, each of those child. It's a great book. It really is a great book, and I recommend. It's definitely a 4 out of 5 for me, and it's definitely up my alley. Lastly, this book, y'all. I need to talk about this book. Yo, I read this book and I'm actually getting emotional. This book had such an effect on me that I found myself trying to think about other books that also affected me this way. This is a historical war, book. It's set in Vietnam, and it's oh my God. I need you guys to read. I don't even think I can do justice explaining this book. Y'all know that just like many of you, I watched Hollywood movies, especially movies made by Americans and the war in Vietnam. And I think even Chad Boswick, in one of his videos, was set in Vietnam. You know how our perception of America was influenced while watching those movies, America versus Vietnam. So the story follows, and it's based on true events. The fact that it was based on true events, this is why I was like, okay. This is why I love these books, y'all, because books written about traumatic events and reading them like as real really hurts. But like when it's fictional, and she said the characters were fictional, but the story is real. So it's the story of the Tran family, and I'm not sure how to say this name, but it's Diu Len and her granddaughter Wong. So the way this story begins, first of all, it's the bombing. So it's the grandmother with her granddaughter fleeing her little village into another village because there are helicopters or airplanes dropping bombs on her village. That's how the story starts. So it's very triggering, y'all. And they run into a school in order to hide, and under those school they have tunnels, or they dug not tunnels but underground holes for them to hide whenever they have all these bombing. And once the bombing is done, it's the description of the bodies that gets you. Y'all can just imagine what bombing does to human beings. You know what I mean? And that's how the story starts. Once you move forward, you have the grandmother and Wang traveling to another village where they are sheltered by another family who helps them take care of them and sheltering them and all that stuff. And at the same time, you learn about Liu Lan, who is the grandmother. You learn about her family. So the whole story is her telling her granddaughter the story of her husband, her kids, who are Wang, uncles and aunties, and each story from the beginning of the page to the middle to the end, I have goosebumps, y'all. I don't know. Can you tell? I have goosebumps. It was so heartbreaking. She did not get a moment of respite in her life, but yet she was so grateful. She was like, because she's Buddhist, Oh my God. sorry, it began with her dad. That was just so sweet. So when I say her dad, I'm talking about the grandmother. She's talking about how she was growing up. She was, they were growing up happy. And one day, her dad and her decided to go into village because, again, there was still war during that time. And back then, I think it was Vietnam against Chinese. And what happened is that while they were traveling this road to go give these potatoes to another village, they heard, commotion coming. And from that commotion, they knew that there was danger approaching. So the dad tells Lu Du Lan, the grandmother, and her brother to go hide in the forest. There was a forest beside the road. And then you see him being approached, Chinese, on both sides of his, chariot. I'm not sure if there was a horse or cattle or whatever. What was it that they were? Was it cows that they were wielding back then? They approach him. They're like, "Where are you bringing this? Like, are you part of like the enemies? Like, are you like betraying us? Like, are you know what I mean?" The guy's like, "No." And they looked in the chariot. There was just potatoes, and he tried to explain to them. And at some point, you see there's other Chinese men who are coming with a group of women who have like hands behind them, and they have blood coming down their legs. Y'all can just imagine. And she saw her dad being cut with a sword. That's the first event, no problem. She, like I said, I'm sparing you from that time what happens, but you can just imagine the pain she felt to just witness that. And such a senseless murder for no reason. They could have just, I don't even know what to say. So anyways, her brother tells her that they have to go, and they go back home. The mom is devastated. She's not able to come out of it. And then it was her brother, and then there was, how many brothers? It was that brother. I think it was just the two of them, if I'm not mistaken. But anyways, during that time, y'all, like I said, it's during war. War has been going on in Vietnam for years. Literally from when she was a young child, from when she became a grandmother, there's still war. So her mom, one day they go because they need to forage for food. They're starving. People are dying of hunger. That book, the way they describe emaciated children, the effects of war, and how people just became skeletons is absolutely horrendous. To know that it's real. Again, something happens to her mom. Her mom was just going to find food, y'all, to feed her children. That's second person. And then while this is happening, there's real life happening. Real life with her granddaughter Wang is that the grandmother has about 3 sons who went to war. 1, 2, 3 who went to war. Yeah, when I say it's hardship after hardship, trauma after trauma after trauma, I'm telling y'all, it's a lot. It's a lot for a family to go through that. Anyways, something happens to her mom. And I want to conclude this, and I want to read you just a few quotes here. "And our house, it was gone. Our bang tree lay sprawled across the rubble. Grandma sank to her knees. Howls escaped from deep inside her, piercing through the stench of rotting bodies, merging into wailing sea of sorrow. A week after our arrival, an American airplane was shot, and its pilot managed to fly his burning plane toward Hoa Binh." The thing with Vietnam and Chinese and America is that Americans were obviously involved in this war. And one thing I want to say about what the author said is that at some point, she describes a scene when there's a little break. These American soldiers, including black men and white men, and it's weird because the way she describes it's as if these Vietnamese people hadn't seen black people. And she describes the scene of them washing themselves in a river. And it hit the character, I believe it was one of the sons of Du Lan, who was at war. He saw them as humans. They were just boys. They were just young boys. So that was really hard to also see. So I want to read this other quote. She says here, the Japanese had said on the radio that Asians out to love Asians, and they were not here to fight. They said they'd help Vietnam establish its independence. I'd seen with my own eyes how polite Japanese soldiers were. See, this is reminding me of the diplomat's daughter, because the way I read of Japanese here, and I hope I'm not mistaken, was it Chinese or Japanese? The killing. Because in that book, Japanese are almost like not the victim, but you get more of the perspective of Japanese in the daughter's diplomat. Whereas in this book, it's more of the Vietnamese perspective. And going back to the grandmother, she has all her children and they're all inscribed in the war. Y'all know the propaganda of war, right? They all went to war. And there's also the mom of one, who's the daughter of Dulan. So she has that daughter. So she has 2 daughters and I think 3 boys. And the mother of one, gosh, the names is hard to say. It's Huong, Huang, who's the granddaughter. Her mother comes from war. Once the war is declared over, she comes back home and she's forever changed. She's not able to cope with real life, and her daughter tries to understand what happened, what's going on, and boy oh boy, y'all can just imagine, women at war, what happens, right? What happens? So just add that trauma to what the grandmother has already gone through. I already spoke about the mom, the dad, okay? And then at some point, when the war is over, they're rebuilding their lives. Before they're rebuilding their lives, the grandmother does marry. Okay, I hope I'm not confusing y'all, but I need to talk about this book. Like I need to show you how much it affected me. While she was growing up, you know, her dad passes away, her mom passes away. She is married. She finds love and has those 5 children that I just mentioned. Men, when I say she went through so much with those 5 children to the point where she had to leave each child and maybe keep just one while she was running away. Because in this book they talk about land reform. What was happening is that the government felt that most of the workers who own land took that, I guess, they shouldn't have those lands, so they wanted to share those lands, and it was through land reform that they would usurp those lands from those owners, including the grandmothers, and give them basically to the regular people. Garbage truck is going by. So what happened is that she had built her land, you know, she had remade her life with her husband, her children, but then because of the land reform, y'all know what happened? They took that land away from her and they were trying to kill her. So again, just remember the trauma, okay? So now her brother is killed. Her firstborn has been arrested and brought somewhere, so she's not able to see him until years later. He's like in his 40s. And then she's made to run with her 2 daughters and I guess 2 boys. And as she is running away at night, sleeping in horrible conditions, her children are falling sick because it's Vietnam, y'all. There are rivers, there are mosquitoes, there's fever, it's heat, and sometimes it's cold, and they don't have the proper attire, and they're hearing voices, they can't even sleep properly, and they're starving, they're emaciated. She has nothing, she's left with nothing. Like, this book was so much, y'all. It's just so much. Oh boy, I would recommend this book. 4.75 out of 5. Like, it's not quite a 5-star because it's too much. It's just so much. It's super much. Let me see if there's more I can share with you in terms of quotes. My dear husband wasn't home. His mother had died from starvation. His father was growing weak but refused to come and stay with us, believing that his wife's soul still lingered at home and needed company. Hong had told me he hoped to find something to eat on the way to his father, but I didn't know what. There was no food for sale at the market. Nobody had anything left to sell. We longed for food to reach us from the south, but nothing Japan or America had been fighting in other parts of the world, and now American bombs had exploded onto our land, destroying shipping lines, ports, roads, and railways. Sorry, just wanted to read that so you guys understand the involvement of the Vietnam War. Who was there? The Americans, the Japanese. That's terrible. It marked the end of a bloodbath that flooded our country for nearly 20 years, drowning more than 3 million people, leaving millions of other injured, traumatized, and displaced. Once I read an article about the bombs that had been dropped during our war, and the number stunned me. 7 million tons. Yo, I can't make this shit up. The Vietnam War, but called by the current Vietnamese government the Resistance War against America to save the nation. Regardless of its name, even today, the war continues to kill children in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, with millions of tons of unexploded ordnance still buried in the belly of the earth. There was something that they were dropping, and it was called something orange.
Agent Orange.
During the Vietnam War, Americans were told that spraying millions of acres of dense jungle with Agent Orange would deprive the Viet Cong of cover and save GIs' lives. Vietnam has been blamed for creating a human catastrophe among veterans and the Vietnamese.
Vietnam is convinced that these children are just the latest victims of the deadly chemical dioxin in Agent Orange.
I resented America too, but by reading their books, I saw the other side of them, their humanity. Somehow, I was sure that if people were willing to read each other and see the light of other cultures, there would be no war on earth. Yo, this is what I've been preaching. This is why I said in one of my videos to read about one another so we could avoid it. When she said that, I was like, I feel the same way. I have to conclude this book, but there was one aspect I wanted to talk about. One of the son who was at war did come back, and he resented his mom because his mom was basically being in the dark market, and he didn't want that because he was, I guess, either in the government or something like that. And if you had a relation that was in the dark market, it was not handled properly, but yet the grandmother did everything. Y'all saw the beat. Grandmother did everything to take care of that family. That son that resented his wife was pregnant, but unfortunately the kid was born with deformity, and it stemmed from those bombings and I guess the toxicity that was let out in the air. Y'all heard about how it affected, and still today it affects children, and children being deformed. So anyways, you guys, it's a 4.75. I don't know why it took so long to read this book, but I recommend. It will break your heart. Like, I need to do a video where I share books that will completely destroy you. Now this is worthy of the word destroy. It destroyed me. I kept thinking about God, religion, humanity, this world, and I went into some dark thoughts. Ugh, I'm done. I think I'm done, yo. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching from beginning to end. And please, just to let me know that you watched from beginning to the end, could you please leave a Vietnam flag in the comment? Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and share. And I will see you in my next video. Ciao.